I know every crow thinks theirs is the blackest, but she's always had a bunch of boys coming around wanting to date her. So there was one that came around, and he was a player. Do y'all remember that, player? Remember? So the young people call it player. My husband's not a player. He doesn't chat at all. So he never sweet talked me or, he's not that way. Solid, though, solid. I've got good health insurance. But, he is never, charmed, not that kind of man. Okay. Well, she had this one coming around. He was a charmer. He was a player. And so he would say to me things like, Miss Morgan, you look beautiful. And I'd be like, can I make you a casserole? And eventually they broke up, praise God, because I was exhausted. I was blowing my hair out every day and mopping the kitchen floor. But the reason I got played, let me tell y'all, the reason I got played is because my love language is words of affirmation. Okay, if you have not taken that test, go get you a book called The 5 Love Languages. My husband and I did it at the Methodist Church. When we were just married, we went on a retreat and we did this. And they have one for your children and they have one for your spouse. So you read it, you take the test, and everybody has a prominent love language. There's 5 of them. And so you find out what your spouse's love language is. And they find out what your love language is, and you feed each other their love language. And then when you do, their love tank feels full. And if they feed you yours, your love tank feels full. If you don't feed them their love language, they go to work. And they're at the water fountain. And some whore comes up. And feeds them their love language. And then they feel a tingle. And then Satan swoops in. Everybody, I think you know where I'm going with that. Okay. So there's 5 love languages. The first one is quality time. You know people that just want you to spend quality time with them. Just them. Okay. Then there's physical touch. I know you girls think, that's my husband. Physical touch. He's on me like a duck on a June bug. But I'm not talking about that kind of physical touch, the nasty kind. I'm talking about, people that just want to squeeze and they're physical and they want to hold your hand, they want to hug on you. That kind of physical touch. Okay, then there's gifts. And that's my sister. She loves, if you've thought about her, it doesn't have to be expensive. If it's a rose, if it's a card, hers is gifts. She feels love and her love tank is full. Mine is words of affirmation. So all my husband has to say is, Leanne, you look beautiful today. Or Leanne, that Trisha Yearwood's chicken piccata is to die for. And then I'm willing to do something vulgar with him. And then he gives me money to get my hair highlighted. My middle one that lives here in Chattanooga has always had a lot of suitors coming around and wanting to date her. And she had this one, and he was I wouldn't say an Eddie Haskell, but he was a schmoozer. Like he knew he was a player. Okay, their daddy's not a player. Okay, my husband, he doesn't chat. Like he vacuumed out my car when he was dating me, and he bought my cigarettes, so that's how we started. But anyway, it was the 80s. But anyway, the young people call it playa, some fast-talking boy. She had this fast-talking boy coming around, and he would say to me things like, "Miss Morgan, you look beautiful today." And I was like, "Can I make you a casserole?" Thank goodness they broke up, because I was exhausted. I was mopping the floor and blowing my hair out every day. And I don't do that. Let me tell you why I got played. I thought, why am I so tickled when somebody compliments me? It's because my love language is words of affirmation. Have y'all ever heard of that book, 5 Love Languages? It is wonderful, and it works. It's the real deal. My husband and I went on a Sunday school class retreat when our children were little, and we watched this little frail man talk about it. Okay, and it was on Oprah, so it's real. But anyway, what it is there's 5 love languages, and you get the book, you read the book. Well, I don't read the book. But anyway, you take the test, and it tells you what your prominent love language is out of those 5, and it tells you what your partner's love language is. So then you can go home at night and feed your partner their love language, and they can feed you your love language, and then your love tank feels full. And if you don't do it, then your partner's liable to go to work, and they're at the water fountain, and some whore comes in. And feeds their love language. And then they feel a tingle. And then Satan swoops in. Y'all know where I'm going with that? It's a disaster. So, there's 5 love languages. There's quality time. And that's my sister's. Quality time, but you just can sit and watch ESPN with somebody, which I don't want to, but you just sit with somebody. Okay. Then there's gifts, and you can just give them a card and they feel loved. It doesn't have to be something expensive. Okay, then there's physical touch, and most women in here will go, "Oh my gosh, that's my husband's physical touch. He's on me like a duck on a June bug." But it's not that kind of nasty. I'm talking about, there's people that just want to hug you and kiss you and squeeze you and they got to hold your hand. That's the physical touch you're talking about. Okay, then there's words of affirmation. That's mine. So all my husband has to say is, "Leanne, you are a good mama. Leanne, that Trisha Yearwood's chicken piccata is to die for." And then my love tank feels full, and then I'm willing to do something vulgar with him. And then he gives me money to get my hair highlighted. So you see how it all works out. So his love language, the 5th one, is acts of service. So I have to go and build a set of shelves in the garage. I want to talk to y'all about, because I am 51 and going through hormonal changes. Okay, I am with their daddy, and these children all walked off and left me with him. And he's so not fun. And he can't help it. He's that way because he has to make a living for all of us. And he's got a lot on us, and all the money's going out the window. And, because we got 2 in college, we just had 1 get married. But he and I are having to adjust being together for the first time in how many years, before we got married. And so he sends me emoji, kissy faces, and stuff like that. But I am low on progesterone and testosterone. He's low on testosterone, praise God. I've got too much estrogen, which evidently makes you hateful and bitter and angry. And so I sweat all night, just like I've done jazzercise in the bed all night. And I wake up, I've got sweat right here in the back of my head. My head just looks like fuzz in the back. And my husband, okay, so I put it on 67, and he says, I can see my breath, and that's a lie. But he's having to wear pajamas for the first time in our marriage, and we've got 2 beagle hounds that we're in love with because his children are gone. And so we've got a big one, and he takes the big beagle and spoons the big beagle at night. And I've got the little beagle, the little pocket beagle that we rescued, and she's got a nervous tick and eats our furniture and our fabric like a goat. But anyway, they sleep in the bed with us, and the bed is so nasty. Okay, so the little beagle, so he's spooning the big one. The little beagle backs her little butthole up to my head. And sleeps up against me all night. I love her. And in the morning, I can hear my husband when he gets up, he's kissing that big beagle and he's going, and I'm so thankful. I like a clean house too. But I'm too fun to clean. I want somebody else to do it, you know? So to make my husband happy, I got to where I would just pour bleach in certain parts of the house. And so when he came home, he'd smell it and think that I had been cleaning. It worked for a little while, and then he caught on to me. And he said, if you'll have sex with me twice a week, I'll get you a maid. No. And then, he said, well, if you don't start taking care of my needs, I guess I'm going to have to get a girlfriend. I said, oh, dear Lord, say it's not so. I said, well, make sure that she's stout and that she can mow, because I need some help. Meets the Olympics, really. It's gymnast. They're gymnasts. And there's one in Knoxville called the Sharks. And they said, drop your baby off and she can try out to audition, whatever you want to call it. So I dropped her off, and they ended up putting her on a bad mamma jamma team because all the little children her age came up to hear on her. And somebody's got to throw them up in the air. So they were thrilled with her, and they treated us like royalty. But anyway, they said, you're going to come in here twice a week, learn a 2-minute routine. It's going to cost you $150 a month. It's like, okay. They said, there's a uniform that you're going to order, and it comes to here. It's going to expose her stomach. She's going to have a tiny skirt on with a slit in it with a glitter panty underneath it. It's $300. I said, that's a whore outfit. And it came with its own bag of whore makeup. So that all the little children could look alike. And they said, y'all are going to travel to faraway lands and compete against other little whore children. So we went to like Cincinnati or Atlanta. And we had to get hotel rooms and the gas and all of that. And then you drive up to a big coliseum, a huge coliseum. And there's tens of thousands of little whore children walking around. And my husband said, there could be pedophiles here. This is the awfulest thing I've ever, something's not right. Okay, so then they said, you're gonna pay $150 for your baby to be in this competition. You're gonna have to pay $30 to put a band on to get in and watch your baby in this competition. Somebody was selling corn dogs for $15. Okay. They start out with the babies, so it goes from 5 to 18 ages. So the babies come out in a tiny little skirt about the size of a napkin. And they come out to Beyonce's All the Single Ladies. And their little mamas are in their 20s. And they're not bitter yet. And they're in the front doing every move to keep their baby on track because they're babies and they need to be at home breastfeeding. So they move up throughout the day into my baby's age, and they're the reef sharks. They call out that name, honey, for 2.5 minutes. My baby throws little children up in the air, flinging little children, broken out in a sweat, working like a Trojan. Did you see my Spanx? Okay, all right. One of my girls said I look like Miley Cyrus in the Wrecking Ball in my Spanx. But anyway, so she throws these little children up. The little children she's throwing up in the air are the flyers. They call them the flyers. And they're freakishly tiny little children. I don't know where these people come from. Their mamas are freakishly tiny. I mean, I come from big people. I've got thick ankles. I can work in the fields. And the whole time she's throwing them in there, these little girls are going. And nobody knows why, really. So at the end of the routine, after the 2.5 minutes, the finale, everybody hunkers down on the stage, puts their forehead on the stage, and my baby is the finale. She pops up and has a little child's foot in her hand and holds that child's foot. I would put it all the way up, but my dress is tight in the back. But anyway, she holds this little child up over her head. Are y'all listening to me? I mean, it was a big deal. Could you hold her up over your head or vice versa? I mean, you know, it's a big deal. So anyway, everybody went nuts. But she said, after it was over, she goes, I'm tired. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to go back to playing. She ended up playing volleyball the rest of her childhood. But she said, I'm keeping that whore outfit. She said, I'm going to get married in it. I think, oh gosh, I've got to go buy a bathing suit. And now it's over, and I barely even wore one. What I've been wearing is my swim dress. Because my life is over. I did a show for a bunch of women, and one of the women came up and she said, you know, you ought to go to Sears and get you a swim dress in the Land's End department. And I thought, should this hurt my feelings? So I did. I went to the Sears in Knoxville, Tennessee. They've still got our Sears open. I don't know if y'all's is open or not in Chattanooga. Okay, ours, you go in, there's not a soul in there. The lights are on. Nobody's shopping. Nobody's working. I mean, I felt creeped out, and I thought, are they running dope out of Sears? So I bought me a Land's End swim dress, and I gotta tell y'all, I'm beautiful in it. Okay. It gathers in right here where my hernia mesh is. And it shows my arms that I still have, because they're my daddy's. Jimmy Fletcher, I've still got his arms. Okay, I've still got my collarbones, praise God. And then it covers up the white flour and the sugar. So I just get a spray tan and I'm good. Well, for years, I was in torment wearing a miracle suit. I don't know if any of y'all have bought a miracle suit before. I know they've got them at y'all's Belk. I know they got them. And there's gonna be a big gob of them hanging together, because they have hundreds of them. And I wore one year. I felt so desperate after I couldn't wear a bikini anymore. I wore a lavender one in Hawaii, and my husband and I went, and they took this scuba video of us scuba diving, and I popped that video in from Maui, and I thought, oh, I can't wait, and this like big lavender thing goes by, and I'm like, what is that? I destroyed that video. It's awful. But anyway, so I get this miracle suit. They're at y'all's Belk, and it's got a big sign that says lose 10 pounds in 10 minutes. Miracle suit. You do, because you sweat yourself to death trying to get it on. Because it's got a girdle in it. The girdle's right through here, because it's a one piece. So the girdle's right through here. It smooths you out real pretty through here, because it squeezes your fat out in every other hole. And don't get it wet, because somebody will have to cut it off of you. But I would get it every year because I felt desperate and I didn't know what else to do. Well, my girlfriend, the one with the poop, banked up poop, okay, she wanted one, and her 14-year-old daughter drove to Knoxville to the Dillards and got in the dressing room, and the 14-year-old was in there sacking her mama up in this bathing suit, and they both broke out in the sweat over their lip, and the 14-year-old said, ew. Mom. Gross. Let's put it back and get out of here. She said, I can't, I've got to buy it. I just peed in it. Little girl. And then I have my 22-year-old daughter, and then my 20-year-old daughter, and she's still in Knoxville with us. And so these children grew up and left me with their daddy. And he is so not fun. And so he doesn't chat. And so I'm just at home talking to myself. And we've got 2 beagles, and we miss these children so bad that we just sit and kiss them in the mouth. So I'm trying to adjust to just being with their daddy. And so I bought him tickets to go see Def Leppard and Journey. Woo! Okay, let me tell you. Have y'all been to concerts lately with old people that are older than I am? Okay. We went, and I thought, oh, we're going to have a fun date. And I said, where are we going to go out to eat? And he goes, I don't have time for that. It was on a weeknight. So he went to the Pilot and bought himself a tall boy. And I think that's what it's called, and an egg salad sandwich from the Pilot. And so I didn't get to eat, and I was so hungry. And it dawned on me at a concert. You know, when I was 20 and I'd go to a concert, I was at University of Tennessee, and so I'd go to Thompson Bowling. And I'd wear a crop top, and I didn't care about eating. I wasn't hungry, you know. I was thinking what boys were going to be there, and I had on little bitty breeches. Because I still had a metabolism and my thyroid was acting right. Okay. So we go to Def Leppard and Journey, and everybody there is our age. And everybody's worried about the snack bar, first of all. And I was too. And I was so hungry, and I noticed that people had big Diet Cokes, like big buckets of Diet Coke, and were sucking on those big buckets of Diet Coke while the concert was going on, and every once in a while, somebody would stand up and then they'd sit back down. Journey has a little bitty feller from another country singing for them, and he's yummy. He looks like a little M&M. You could put him in your pocket. And you can tell he doesn't eat white flour and sugar. And he's singing and doing, he sounds like Steve Perry, but it's not the same. You know, Steve Perry's my boo. So it was like we were going to a tribute concert. But anyway, everybody in the band, besides this little fella, everybody had eaten white flour and sugar, and probably had done dope and drank terrible things, and everybody looked sick, and the bass player looked like somebody I had bought my jewelry from for years, and they were just barely a-going. And then Def Leppard came out, and it was that lead singer, I think, has got thyroid issues. His hair was just thin and didn't have a lux to it, and then I noticed he had little bitty tiny legs and a little pot-belly stomach. But he sang "Put Some Sugar on It," which I hate that mess. I am a Earth, Wind and Fire R&B gal, and I love my Journey, but I was like, this isn't my thing. And my husband every once in a while would go, and then just sit down, because he loves it. But anyway, this little man with the tiny little legs and the thinning hair, and then he had this little bump right here, and I could tell that's a hernia. He's got a hernia. That he hadn't had time to get it fixed. He hadn't had time to put a mesh in. And you could just see it. It looks like my stomach, because I've had a hernia, but I've had mine fixed. And I thought, oh, bless his heart. But he'd do, and he'd prop a little thin, frail leg up on something. Oh, I thought, isn't it funny how things have changed since I went to concerts when I was 20? Everybody was walking out like this because everybody had inflammation in their feet. Trying to get to their car. And it was like 10 o'clock. I thought, what are we doing out here? What are we doing? We gotta get home. We gotta get in the bed. Because he is now since married and gone off with his wife and her people. And that's what boys do. They cling to their wife. That's biblical. He said to me, Mom, she is now my immediate family. You are my extended. That's what he said to me right before they got married. And he said, Mom, that's biblical. I'm supposed to cling to my wife. And I thought, why did I show him the Bible? Well, he has always been spiritually mature. We call him our little Billy Graham. My husband and I, we didn't do it. God did it. I'm full of sin. Okay. I've been washed in the blood, but I've been a horrible, horrible person. Not too bad, but okay. So this baby has been just like an old man all of his life. Let me give you an example. He had a little girlfriend in high school, and he would go over to her house and they'd watch movies. And he came home one night and he used to tell me everything. And I said, what y'all been doing? He said, well, we've been watching television and kissing on the couch. And I said, okay, baby, okay. That's all right. That's normal. But I said, you know, before you know it, you've got your hand on somebody's leg, your arm around, and you know, things can get out of control. And I just say, slow it down. He looked at me like I was crazy. And he said, Mom, I've prayed about this. Nothing like that's going to happen. And I know he meant that. And all I could think of to myself was some of the nastiest things I ever did. Was at the Adams United Methodist Youth Fellowship on a hayride. I don't know what it was about hay that set me on fire. I wish it did now, because I could get a new purse out of that. Okay, y'all, have you ever heard of lock-in? I know everybody in here that has been from Chattanooga has probably been raised in church. Okay, I don't know who that little darling, sweet fool was that came up with the lock-in. Some probably little woman in a committee meeting. And she probably said, oh gosh, y'all, let's come up with something for all the hormonal teenagers. Let's gather them up and put them in the church building and lock the door and turn the lights out and leave them there all night. Maybe somebody will end up pregnant. So at the end of the routine, after the 2.5 minutes, the finale, everybody hunkers down on the stage, puts their forehead on the stage, and my baby is the finale. She pops up and has a little child's foot in her hand and holds that child's foot. I would put it all the way up, but my dress is tight in the back. But anyway, she holds this little child up over her head. Are y'all listening to me? I mean, it was a big deal. I mean, could you hold her up over your head or vice versa? I mean, you know, it's a big deal. No, you know what I've been thinking about? I thought about, Lord, Christmas is coming. And now I'm a grandmama, and I'm out making a little money. But when I was a stay-at-home mom, when we first got started out and had little children, I remember thinking, oh my Lord, that Little Tykes kitchen's gonna sell out. And my husband doesn't like to let go of money till right at the end of Christmas. And I'm like, I gotta get there. Oh, okay, I'll do something nasty. I'm gonna... Okay, I'll do something nasty in that big Dodge Ram in that mobile home parking lot. Yeah, and then I'll be able to get that Elmo. Yeah. Y'all won't believe the things I've done so my children could have a good Christmas. You know, but they always did. Oh, you little mamas, God love you. And then you gotta clean everything and cook and then wrap. I had a good friend that she said to her husband, if you'll wrap 3 Christmas presents, I'll have sex with you. She did. I remember that years ago, and I remember thinking, okay, I could do that. Maybe I could do that. I've had it. Yeah. Inflammation in our feet. Y'all know what causes that? White flour and sugar. My husband does not spend money and does not believe in anybody being comfortable. Really. He does not believe in luxury. He believes in suffering. This is one thing that he strongly believes in. He believes in all of our family driving cars until the wheels fall off in the interstate. He finds joy having to come get somebody. All my children have driven old cars that look like they're about to fall apart. This is what he does for me. He'll buy me a car about a year old, pay cash for it, and then make me drive it the rest of my life. I put my foot down last year because I was driving a 2009 white Honda Pilot. If you don't know what that model looks like, it looks like I was delivering Lay's potato chips. And I never felt pretty in it. I really did. It had over 235,000 miles on it. And the lights started flashing in it saying, "Get out, Leanne, get out." He drives a 2007 Tahoe and the T and the A are missing. And if I was home tomorrow, we would be pulling up in that big Tahoe to the Baptist church in the doorway. And when church is over, my husband wants out of there and doesn't want to talk to anybody. And see, that's my time to fellowship. And he drives that big old Tahoe up to the front door of the Baptist church and goes, and he always says, "You're the last one in the parking lot." I said, "There's going to be a lot of people at my funeral." I've built relationships with people. He goes, "Okay, fine. I'll have to have mine in a yogurt shop." She's called me today and said, "Mom, are you okay? How did your show go last night?" And I go, "Good." So the day before, she goes, "Did you make it to Huntsville?" I said, "Yes, baby. Thank you. Tell your daddy." Curtis, he was so in love with me, honey. Stalked me, bought me presents, did all that. We will be married 29 years. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I truly believe that he would not pull me out of a burning vehicle. Okay, here's something that's different. Now that they're having little children, so different than when I had mine. There was a book that I read in and out, and I bet a bunch of y'all that are my age read this one too. What to Expect When You're Expecting. Yeah, it was a hateful book. It was a hateful book, but it was true. And they would say things to you like, "You're going to have a hemorrhoid in the 7th month on the 4th day." At 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And you'll be like, it's terrible. Back then, everybody was terrified about food allergies, and that was a big thing that they stressed, and our pediatricians. And I remember having this whole big chart in my kitchen on the wall that told me, my boy, I wouldn't let him have sweet potatoes until August after I had cleared the squash in July. That just crazy. And I did perfect with him. The second one came along, did okay with her, really did. That third one came along. We were at the McDonald's. I had two playing one in the balls and one up in a tube. And my baby child did not have any teeth yet. She was in a high chair, and I threw a cheeseburger onto her high chair, and she gummed it down. And a woman came over the intercom and said, "Excuse me, ma'am, but your baby has pooped in the tube." So then I would have to go up in the tube, get my baby, pull my baby down through the tube. Do y'all remember playing in the balls? My children loved the balls. And Lord, we had a ball going. Me and my friends would go to anywhere that they had a bunch of balls and tubes, and little children would be playing in a dirty diaper. swim by on top of the balls. And then like a chicken nugget, they're going through. You think about all this with COVID. There's no way they'd let any of that happen. Good night. You think of Chuck E. Cheese? That was a free-for-all. Mine loved it. Okay. Let me tell y'all this. Baby food has changed, and I didn't know this. When I was having my babies, you had little baby food jars. They've still got maybe 2 of those on the grocery store thing. Now it's in pouches. Everything's in pouches, and I don't think they're worried about food allergies. My grandbaby had a pouch that had turmeric, cashews, and squash in it, all squished together. And now they don't feed babies with spoons. They just squirt that pouch in their mouth. Everything's on the go. They just squirt and go, squirt and go. And I'm worried about it. I really am. I think there's going to be a whole generation that doesn't know how to use utensils. Okay, the 5 love languages. All right. Me and Chuck Morgan in Sunday school class went on a retreat, and they talked to us about the 5 love languages. You know, and it's written by little Gary Chapman, who is a doll and tiny and does, that man's probably getting in his 90s, and he does sit-ups every day. And that little thing, and I got to meet him later. He was a doll. But anyway, the 5 love languages, if you don't know about that, you've got to get it. There was a 5 love languages for your marriage, and then there's one for your children. And you need to get that. Everybody's got a love language. And you take the test. You got to read the book and take the test. Well, you don't read the book. I didn't. But you can take the test. I like to read books about Hollywood murder. So, anyway, you take the test, and then and your husband takes the test, and you find out what his love language is, and he finds out what your love language is. And if you find that out, then you can feed them their love language. And then, so I can feed Chuck Morgan his love language, and then his love tank fills full. If I don't, he could go to work and be at a water fountain, and some whore comes up to him and starts feeding him his love language, and then he feels a tingle, and then Satan swoops in. So these are the 5 love languages. Quality time. If you may know somebody that just wants you to sit on the couch and watch ESPN with them. Something like that. Then there's gifts. That's my sister's love language. It doesn't have to be something expensive. Just so you thought of her, if you buy her a card and a rose from the grocery store, she'll bawl her eyes out. And then there's words of affirmation. That's mine. But, physical touch. Physical touch, which I know every woman in here is like, that's my husband. Physical touch. But it's not that kind of physical touch. We're talking about the physical, when you know people that just want to hug you and squeeze on you and all that all the time. That's their love language, is physical touch. But women think, that's my husband's, and he's on me like a duck on a June bug. But that's not the... All right, and then there's words of affirmation. That's mine. So all Chuck Morgan has to do is say, you look beautiful tonight. You are a good mama. That Trisha Yearwood's chicken piccata is to die for. And then my love tank feels full, and then I'm willing to do something vulgar with him. And then he gives me money to get my hair highlighted. See? It works out, It's God's way. And then my husband's is acts of service. So for him to feel loved, I have to go in the garage and build a set of shelves. Does Chuck Morgan get mad at you talking about him? And I go, no. He wants me to talk about him. He'll say, tell him this. He goes, why don't you tell him about the time I got arrested? Okay. It was over 25 years ago. We had 3 little children under the age of 5, and his company sent us the very first trip to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. And I was so tickled that I was going to get to go. I'd never been anywhere like that. And my little mom and daddy took care of my babies for a week for me, so I didn't have to worry about them. And I was so excited. We flew out of our little airport in Knoxville, Tennessee. It took all day, like 12 hours, like mules, trains, planes, boats, I don't know, to get on the other side, the Pacific side. And we get in a hotel room. And I had to do unspeakable things. For 7 days. I never saw Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. By the end of that week, I was depleted. And then it was time to fly all the way back. Took another 12 hours to get back. We get into East Tennessee to our little airport, and we landed at midnight. And we had to drive up into East Tennessee where we were living, and I thought, if I could just put my hands on those babies and go to bed, everything's going to be all right. And but darn, if Chuck Morgan doesn't get pulled off by the police, I think he was going too fast. And what he ended up getting arrested for, it wasn't something bad, but we didn't know that. I think it was another ticket that he needed to pay. And we're on the side of the road, and the police car's in front of us, and I'm looking through the headlights at the police, and I'm thinking, this won't take long. We'll be out of here before you know it. I'll be home. They come around and they get his license, and then they get him out of the car and they take him around the front. And I'm watching all this in the headlights, and they cuff him. And he turns around at me, and I go, and he mouths something at me like, oh, good Lord, Leanne. And my whole life flashed before my eyes. I thought, he's in a drug cartel. He has another family in Idaho. I've always thought he had another family in Idaho because all of our married life he has said, I told you that, and he hasn't. He thinks he's told me stuff, and he has not. And I've said, I've never heard that before in my life. Finally, one day I go, are you telling a woman in Idaho all this? I said, are you going to let her go to Panera, Chuck? Okay, let me tell y'all that. Chuck Morgan, when we met, we were at the University of Tennessee. Go Vols. And he was getting a master's in business and making straight A's and working 3 jobs and wooing me. And I was a wreck, honey. I barely got out of University of Tennessee. I graduated through the skin of my teeth. It took me years. I would drop out, go back, all that. Okay. But when I knew that I was going to get to marry Chuck Morgan, I thought, oh my gosh. He is so smart. He can do anything. He's going to take care of everything. He's going to work like a mule. And I'm just going to have a ball. I'm just going to... Well, we married, and I had my first baby by him. And it dawned on me one day. I thought, he's smart at work. Not at home. And I thought, oh no, surely I'm not in charge. Surely I'm not going to be the one to have to tend all this. Because it was like 3 years before that I was dancing to Prince, When Doves Cry. You know, I was like, well, let me tell you when it really freaked me out. I had my second baby. She was born April the 3rd. This was the last week of March. I was going to go at any time and give birth. And a big snow came in East Tennessee. There was snow on the ground. And I had my oldest baby, Charlie, was 2. He had quit taking a nap, was still in diapers. But he was a precious baby, but very active, and he would beat on the front door trying to get out so he could run down the yellow line of the highway. And I was worn to a frazzle. And I was about to give birth at any minute, and I got strep real bad. And my OBGYN was Pete, who was in our Sunday school class. And he was so cute. And I hated for him to see me that way. But Pete said, "You got a horrible case of strep. I'm going to have to put you in the hospital, Leanne, overnight. You're going to have to get a bag of fluids and rest." And I said, "For real? For real? I get to go in the hospital overnight? It's like somebody sent me to Turks and Caicos." They took me to the hospital, Chuck and had our 2-year-old Charlie, and they dropped me off early that morning and then disappeared. And didn't come back until late that night. And I said, "Where have you been?" And he went, "Nowhere." I said, "What are you doing wearing a sweatsuit and you're sweating?" He said, "Okay, Leanne, I've been playing basketball at the rec center." I said, "Full court?" He went, "Yeah, why?" I go, "Who was watching our baby while you were playing full court basketball?" And I looked down and my baby's got on a diaper swollen down to his ankles. And I said, "What has he eaten?" And he said, "Eaten?" I said, "Chuck, listen to me." I go, "They're going to discharge me tomorrow at noon and they need you to bring me an outfit." Let me tell y'all what he brought me to the hospital. He brought me a pair of panties that were a triangle with strings on it. My belly button was that big. My stomach was out to here. I had to somehow try to get these panties on. I think I was crowning. Those panties were the size of Mark Anthony. He brought me a pair of 6-inch pumps. Black pumps. Okay, you girls that are my age, do y'all remember when Kathy Lee Gifford had her own line of maternity wear at Walmart? Did y'all remember that? It was to die for. It was very inexpensive, basic pieces, mix and match. I loved it. And then something happened with a sweatshop overseas. And they shut her down and I was devastated. But anyway, he brought me a pair of Kathy Lee Gifford summer capris. Summer. There was snow on the ground in East Tennessee. Summer capri. He brought me a summer top that was not maternity. So it hit me about right there. And then a big old fake fur black coat that I definitely danced a prince in a club, honey. And I remember those sweet nurses rolling me out. And I know they got back in that hospital and looked at each other and said, "She's a prostitute." Let me tell y'all about my precious grandbabies. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, yummy, yummy, yummy. I'm in love with them, and I hope I have 10 more, but I've got 2 boys, and they are 2 and 4. And my oldest one calls me Grandmama. And when he spends the night, he'll hold on to the railing and hold on to my hand, and he'll say, "Hold on, Grandmama, hold on." He thinks I'm feeble. It's very different being a mama than a grandmama. They're both wonderful, but they're very different. This is the difference, I think. When my babies want something, I'm going to give it to them. And my boy and his wife are wonderful parents, but they say crap to me. Things like no more riding toys. And I'm like, okay, but I cannot take back this Chevy with a gooseneck. And then they said to me the other day, we're going to have to wean this one off his pacifier. And I was like, yep, that's a good idea. And then I went home and ordered as many as I could off the internet. Now I know why my little mom and daddy acted the way they did. They helped me so much, and my children would spend the night with them. And I remember going to pick them up, and I said to my little daddy, Daddy, they've got a yellow film over their teeth. Had they brushed their teeth since we've been gone? And my daddy shook and got so mad at me and said, they didn't want to. My little mama, Lucille, every time when they were little, they'd go visit them, Mama would sling open that back door and say, welcome. Here's some magic markers right on the wall. Come on into Mama's house and go back and get Mama's bed and take this bucket of chicken with you. Take this bucket of chicken with you and this little bag of mini marshmallows and waller in Mama's bed. And watch Disney until 3 a.m. in the morning. I do the same thing, honey. I do the same thing. I know. Who doesn't love chicken in the bed? And let me tell y'all that we beg them all the time to go on